"Daddy, I tried so hard." But he walked out, didn't even look back. And that's when the maid picked up the test paper and felt it, a coldness that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This 7-year-old wasn't failing because she was slow. She was failing because 15 years ago, her father destroyed someone's life to get ahead, and somehow, that sin had wrapped itself around his daughter's mind like a curse no money could break. Dorothy knew, because the girl he destroyed, that was her niece. Welcome back. If you're here, it's not by accident. Sometimes the stories we need find us exactly when we're ready to hear them. This one isn't just about a little girl who couldn't pass a test. It's about the weight we carry without knowing why, and the freedom that comes when someone finally speaks the truth we've been too afraid to face. Stay close. You might see yourself in this.
The paper trembled in her tiny hands before it slipped onto the marble countertop. Red marks. Too many. Again. Adriana Foster, 7 years old, pink dress wrinkled from hiding in the bathroom all morning, sat on that kitchen counter with her face buried in hands that still smelled like strawberry soap. She wasn't crying anymore. That's what scared Dorothy most. The penthouse around them was worth millions, private tutors, best schools in LA, everything money could buy, except the one thing this child needed. Brian Foster stood by the window in his tailored suit, holding that test like it had personally betrayed him. He didn't yell. He never yelled. He just looked at his daughter the way you look at something broken you can't return. "Daddy, I tried," Adriana whispered. "I tried so hard." He walked out, didn't even answer. Dorothy's hand trembled as she picked up the paper. She'd seen failed tests before, but never one that felt haunted. The math problems looked normal. The red marks looked normal. But the weight coming off this paper, that wasn't normal at all.
That weight had a history. 3 tutors, 2 child psychologists, 1 urologist who charged $800 an hour to say test anxiety, another who called it cognitive freeze, labels that sounded smart but fixed nothing. Brian threw money at the problem like he was trying to drown it. Elite learning centers, memory specialists, that place in Pasadena where tech CEOs sent their kids. Nothing worked. Adriana would sit down for practice tests, pencil ready, and then nothing, like someone flipped a switch in her brain. She'd describe it to Dorothy later, voice small. "It's like everything goes dark. I know the answers are in there, but I can't see them anymore." Dorothy noticed what the expensive doctors didn't. During homework, Adriana panicked, but during bedtime prayers, the child was calm, focused, present. One evening, after another failed practice test, Adriana climbed into Dorothy's lap in the laundry room. "Am I being punished?" she whispered. Dorothy's heart stopped. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "the mind isn't the problem." Because what Dorothy sensed on that child wasn't confusion, it was something borrowed, something inherited. If you've ever felt a weight you couldn't explain, a burden that didn't start with you, but somehow lives in you, then you were meant to find this story. Subscribe, not as a transaction, but as an act of agreement with the truth that some battles we fight aren't ours alone, and freedom begins when we stop pretending we're carrying something heavy. Dorothy found Brian in his home office that night, whiskey in hand, staring at Adriana's test scores like they were a stock portfolio tanking. "Let me help her," Dorothy said. He looked up, surprised she'd even entered. Help her? You mean tutor her?
The disrespect was quiet, polite, the kind that reminds you of your place.
Not tutor, Dorothy said. Just be with her.
He waved her off, but desperation makes men do strange things. So Dorothy sat with Adriana, not at a desk, on the floor. No flashcards, no timers, just presence. They prayed together. Dorothy listened more than she spoke. Adriana got calmer, slept better, but the practice tests still read. One afternoon, Dorothy asked the question no one else dared. "Baby, what scares you when you see numbers?" Adriana's face crumpled. "They feel angry, like I did something wrong, like I have to pay for something, but I don't know what." Dorothy's hands started shaking. For the first time, her composure cracked, because she'd heard those exact words before. 23 years ago, from someone who didn't survive them.
Inherited from him. Dorothy found Brian in his study that night, whiskey in hand, staring at nothing. "We need to talk about Yale," she said quietly. His face went white. "The engineering exam, spring 2008, the one you didn't take yourself." The glass slipped from his hand. Didn't break, just rolled across the mahogany desk like an accusation. "My niece," Dorothy continued, voice steady as a prayer. "Maya, 22 years old, brilliant. You paid her to sit that exam for you. When they caught her, you let her take the fall alone." Brian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "She lost everything, her scholarship, her future. She wrote you letters begging you to tell the truth." Dorothy's eyes glistened. "You never answered. 3 years later, she was gone. Pills and shame." "I didn't know. She prayed for justice every single night. And now your daughter can't think straight during tests because she's carrying a debt that was never hers." That night, Dorothy burned those test papers in the kitchen sink, whispering words Brian couldn't understand. Upstairs, for the first time in months, Adriana slept without nightmares. But the test results were still coming. "There's a reason you're still here. Maybe it's because you know, deep in your spirit, that unconfessed sin doesn't just disappear. It lingers, it transfers, it waits. If this story is waking something in you that's been asleep too long, subscribe. Not because you owe me anything, but because God doesn't waste divine appointments. You were supposed to hear this today." 3 weeks later, Adriana took the test. She walked in, calm, finished early, smiled on the way out. The results came back above average. Above average. Brian stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. He should have been celebrating, should have been relieved, but all he felt was the weight of what it cost. Because 2 days after Adriana's breakthrough, an envelope arrived at his office, anonymous. Old records, emails he thought were deleted, a name he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. The scandal broke quietly at first, then everywhere. Brian Foster didn't run, didn't hire lawyers to bury it. He stood in front of cameras and said the words that destroyed him. "I cheated. Someone else paid. I'm sorry." He lost the business, kept his daughter. Dorothy resigned the morning after. No drama, just a hug in the kitchen that made Adriana cry. "You freed me," Adriana whispered. Dorothy smiled, tears in her eyes. "No, baby, the truth freed you. Because some failures aren't intellectual, they're spiritual chains waiting to be broken. If this story stirred your soul, if it broke something loose in your spirit that's been stuck for years, subscribe, not for entertainment, but as a witness, because when truth sets someone free, even through a screen, the least we can do is say, I saw it, I believe it, and I'm ready for my own chains to break too.